Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavosdin, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including the annuals, which definitely count.
And I'm mischievous Mark Shinakio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but the annuals don't count.
Well, welcome everybody to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and hopefully fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe. Thanks again for joining us for one of our patented review episodes of the Amazing Spider Talk.
Yeah, if you want to swing along with us on our journey through Spidey's past, present, and future, subscribe to Amazing Spider Talk on your favorite podcast app. Every other week, we put out a mainline episode of our flagship show, and sprinkled in between, we review new comics as well as interview some of the greatest Spider-Man creators of yesterday and today. This is the perfect time to start listening. So Dan, today on the show, you and I are going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 80, entitled Beyond, Chapter 6. This issue was written by Cody Ziglar, with art by Michael Dowling, colors by Jesus Aburtov, with Erick Arciniega, with a cover by Arthur Adams and Alejandro Sanchez Rodriguez. The letters are, of course, by VC's Joe Caramagna. This issue was first released on December 1st, 2021. So Dan, why don't you give us the rundown of Beyond Chapter 6?
All right, let's put some music on and I'll get right into it. So here we go. Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 80. Ben's hallucinations are in overdrive. With Kraven hunting him down, he feels himself sinking into the ground. In a moment of despair, he sees visions of faceless, defining moments from Peter's life and calls himself a shell of a greater person. Kraven agrees, encouraging Ben to free himself from Beyond so that he might revert to his truest form. Meanwhile, back at Beyond, Marcus is frantically looking for a way to reconnect with Ben, while begging his staff to hide this detail from Maxine Danger, his boss. Janine is angry too, demanding an answer as to what's going on with Ben. Ben awakens, still poisoned, alongside the previously kidnapped Doug. Remember that guy? On a giant algae farm. Doug helps him to cure his hallucinations and stand up to Kraven. Kraven himself is incensed by how Spidey's embrace of corporatization has weakened him, but Ben wins anyway, before Kraven blows himself up and disappears. Ben returns home like you do. Right, exactly. Ben returns home to relieve Janine and Marcus, who insists that he get his armor off and get into treatment as fast as he can. Marcus kept Maxine at bay, but is also upset that Doug gave Ben medication. Marcus calls to update Maxine, who asks for a more disciplinarian response to Ben's actions. She then talks to Beyond's lawyers about providing a cease and desist to Miles Morales. He will no longer be Spider-Man, which maybe matches his new costume. Meanwhile, Aunt May is seeking out a way to get more data about Peter's illness. So in a surprise, she turns to Dr. Octopus, stating specifically that she'll need his mind to help Peter. He agrees, out of affection for May, and says that he needs to go get his quote-unquote work suit. And that's everything that happened in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 80.
Excellent, Dan. That is a beautiful summary.
Awesome.
So why don't we talk a little bit first about this Kraven versus Ben confrontation, because it's certainly visually cool, but in terms of what was going on between the two of them, I mean, I don't know. What did you think? I mean, to me, like, I feel like this fight was kind of fun, but also felt kind of like empty calories. I don't know. There wasn't a lot of there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I feel like one of the problems with this kind of rotating creative teams is that you can kind of quickly see the kind of how the sausage is being made, and getting these kind of 2-issue micro arcs with villains, especially in the era of 21-page comics. There's not a lot of room to really do much with those villains. Like the Morbius fight to me felt perfunctory. The UFOs fight was fine to me because it just didn't take the front stage. It was a subplot of a subplot. But when you're hinging so much on these villains, you should be doing something I think really interesting with them. And as cool as the visuals were here, if I wouldn't say repetitive, but it didn't really evolve all that much beyond what we got in the previous issue as a tease. I think the bigger problem here is, like, I just don't recognize this Kraven. Like,
yeah,
maybe the thing I needed was an acknowledgement that it was like Kraven's clone, but from his motivations on down to his visual appearance, I just don't recognize who this guy is anymore and what he wants. I mean, he says it here. It's about, like, this kind of idea of a corporate Spider-Man reflecting poorly on him, but I've never really seen that kind of, like, corporate or communist element being a defining feature of Kraven more than it is just like the thrill of the hunt. And maybe it's that Spider-Man is getting some aid now, but this seems like something that could be really cleared up by the fact that, like, hey, I'm a clone, you're a clone. I don't know. There's just like so many opportunities to take it places that it didn't go.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can go back to, like, the Ditko and Ramita eras, and, like, a lot of the hero villain fights that started out, I mean, we're generally pretty shallow, but, like, it felt like motivations were clear. It's like, hey, I'm Electro, I'm trying to steal money, and now Spider-Man's going to stop me and we're going to fight. And, with Kraven, it was always just, he was driven by the thrill of the hunt in those issues. So, like, he showed up because he wanted to hunt Spider-Man. He needed to, like, it was like his big game. It's just unclear. It's like he shows up and he kind of badmouths Ben in terms of his corporate background, but, like, it's not like he's there, it's not even like he's there to say, like, and I'm going to beat you or kill you to evangelize you from your corporate ways. It just kind of seems like he's like, yeah, I don't like what you're up to, and now we're going to fight a bit, and now I'm going to leave. And there's just not much more to it than that, and it just doesn't feel like it's well served. And to your earlier point about, like, kind of the structure of these arcs, I agree. I mean, look, we're just getting out of an era where we had how many issues of world building for one main story, and I'm not advocating to go back there, but I feel like this is a story, this is an arc that's missing an issue or two to flesh these characters out a bit more. And I feel like what you're getting with some of these fast changing, new creative team come in, 2 issues, next one in, is frankly, like, it's not serving the character and it's not serving the stories, because it just feels, like you said, very perfunctory, and okay, now we're doing this, and now we're going to do Miles next time, and rotate, and you have the one through line with what's up with Beyond, but other than that, they're like, these other stories within it don't feel very fleshed out. They just kind of feel like window dressing.
I mean, I feel like the corporate thing, you could really have done something there. Like, say if Spider-Man is fighting Kraven and he uses all this new tech to defeat him, and it feels like a hollow victory, right? Like,
right.
That would be really interesting. Who are you without all the tech, right? Like the Tony Stark MCU Homecoming arc, which is to say, like, are you Spider-Man if you can't do it without all these devices? Or you go the other route, which is to say he tries to use all the corporate gear and it proves him weak. Like, Kraven is able to defeat it quickly, and he says, see, you've become weak relying on all this technology, right? There's an interesting metaphor to do there, but, like, Kraven's knocks of Spider-Man ring hollow when Spider-Man himself doesn't really seem to be embracing that corporate thing. And I think this gets back to kind of the core of what I'm struggling with the Beyond thing is, we get all this lip service about he's a new corporate Spider-Man, yada, yada, but I don't really feel like he's been upgraded in any significant way. Like, I look at the Superior era, and it's very clear, like, what makes that Spider-Man different. Other than this Spider-Man having a babysitter, which he kind of already had in the back in the day with Aunt May, right? Maybe this is a way of upgrading that, but I don't feel what that means for this story and arc, and so I can't really get invested in his Beyond evil, because I don't even know what Beyond is contributing really all that much. Yeah. If Spider-Man's losing to Morbius, it's like, well, that's weird because he never lost to him before, really. So
Right.
Anyway.
And I was just going to say, kind of just to dive in a little deeper there. I mean, the whole corporate angle. It's like I'm still outside of when Beyond is on panel and they're talking about the importance of like their branding and stuff like that. But like this would like maybe we need more of like kind of seeing within the universe, like within the city, kind of like this idea of Ben as this corporate stooge, like have him blasted on like billboards and like it's just something that's just missing here to kind of tie this all together. Like there's stories, there's missing elements in the storytelling here that really drive this home. Like have Craven going from rooftop to rooftop, seeing a giant poster of the new Beyond Corporation Spider-Man and be like, that's not right. That's not who this character should be. I have to do something about it. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I don't know. Like we're not even getting that in terms of like what is, like you said, what does Beyond backing Ben truly mean outside of just kind of evolving this storyline about Beyond itself and kind of what's their motivations like, but like we're not seeing truly how they're doing to like lift up the character in a new way. It's still just kind of like, I don't know. Like, am I missing something here, Dan, or do you see what I'm talking about here?
No. I think we're in complete agreement. I mean, I think it was issue 61 was the introduction of the Threats and Menaces suit.
Right.
And like, I think they ended up doing nothing with that suit, but that introductory issue even set up, I thought, like a more concrete take on a very similar thing, which is to say, like Spider-Man benefiting off of technology.
Right. Right.
And that's also to say, I don't see why this has to be Ben Reilly. There's some idea to that with these holes and faces, which we'll talk about. But so far, I'm not connecting. Like, what is it about Ben Reilly that would get us into this situation? I mean, we commented on how good Cody Ziglar wrote him in the previous issue, and I think it's really solidly written as a character here. But I'm not sure like what it is about this pitch sold Niccolo and company on it has to be Ben Reilly, other than like maybe like we can't move Peter forward too far because we've got some other creator coming down the line. That to me is a flimsy reason. So yeah, I mean, as fun as this fight was, it was in terms of Spider-Man fights being perfunctory. Most of them are. So it's not a big, critical blow here, but I think there was a lot more opportunity with this that we just didn't see come to fruition.
Absolutely. But talk to me a little bit about the artwork here, because I mean, well, that's your domain, but also like, there was some really interesting visual presentation here that we haven't really been seeing in a while here, although we're starting to get a little visual thematic thing going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I shout out to the colorists on this issue. We mentioned their names up top, Aburtov and Arciniega. Like, so much of Dowling's artwork is kind of like outline heavy. There's not a lot of like inherent, shading in his pencils and inks. And so like, I think the colorists really did a fabulous job. I mean, the kind of like dark brown moodiness of the Craven hallucinations, I think, is really striking. With punctuated by like the flaming head of Craven. There's some images there I'm not sure quite what to think of, like Janine's face, like kind of appearing on Craven's head, and things like that. But I don't know. I'm down for more melty Spider-Man, and the close-up details here. There's this one image of like Spider-Man falling with, I think it's Craven's face, kind of like cut in half in like the Manhattan cityscape. That was really striking. So anyway, I mean, it's detailed. Like, this guy clearly poured over these pages. The whole team did. So shout out to that. But then there's this interesting motif that we're seeing with these kind of like, how would you describe it? Just like a hole. I think about the Spot, but it's definitely not as goofy as the Spot. It's this creepy hole in the face of
like a crater almost. Yeah.
We saw it in the first issue of this run with Uncle Ben's face. What do you think about this? I mean, does it make you feel like it's getting at some kind of narrative thing? Is it just a shorthand for something? I mean, seeing it repeated like this suggests to me there's something much more going on here.
You mean, is this going to be this run's version of Lookout, or?
Oh boy, don't get me started.
I'm kidding. I mean, there's definitely, and frankly, with the other artwork, the trippiness of the artwork, I mean, there's something very surrealistic about it, like a Salvatore Dali painting. But thematically, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with this in terms of what might be the underlying message here. Is there a hollowness to the idea of Spider-Man right now? I mean, but hollowness how? I mean, are they commenting on the character within this world because of the loss he's experienced, or is it a kind of a subtweet of how Spider-Man in the comics as of late has been presented, and there's kind of a hollowness to it right now? I don't know. I probably not that, but I might think that after the last few years. But I don't know. I mean, there's clearly a lot thematically they can go with this imagery if they keep pushing it. But I'm kind of intrigued to see where they keep pushing it, I guess.
I mean, it's definitely something in the text, right? Because we had that moment where Ben forgot a memory from his time with Uncle Ben. And,
right.
If you were to ask me to just kind of guess what this is, I would think, maybe the genetic memory that the Jackal provided to Ben that allowed him to experience Peter's childhood, up until the moment that he was cloned, is disappearing. But and that would fit with all the clues, except for the first one. The first time we saw this, it was Peter having a nightmare about this. Right. So there's something being shared between the two, whether it's maybe one soul can't have two bodies, or something like that. But there's definitely something going on here. To me, this is the most intriguing part of the Beyond saga thus far, because I guess I don't know what it means, and I'm curious to see where they take it. It's clearly they have some goal in mind.
Yeah, I just had a terrible thought. What do we find out that Peter's a clone too, and that's why this is happening?
Oh, geez, Mark. Oh man, you just injected that into my mind.
I went there.
Oh no. Oh no. I mean, that is actually really fascinating, and if they were to do that, I have no idea where we would go with this. But the only critique I have of this is I think the whole thing would be more meaningful, and the visuals would be more interesting if it didn't feel like such a rehash of Superior, with the buildings falling on Peter and Ben forgetting his name and calling himself Peter. We had the Peter doing the same with Peter Palmer. It just is so similar. And I know Superior was 8 years ago or 9 years ago even, but even then it casts such a large shadow. It's hard to not, connect these things with, and kind of erase that. As much as they're erasing memories here, I can't erase mine.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, it's, and frankly, kind of when Superior was doing it, it was kind of coming on the heels of some of the Marcos Martin work, in No One Dies and stuff like that, which is kind of similar in scope in terms of the mindscape and whatever. I mean, it's interesting to see. God, Superior was 8 years ago. Sorry, that just hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my goodness. I mean, maybe it's not that close, Dan. I mean, it's It's like saying that the what do you call it? The Roger Stern arc and the Jerry Conway arc are too close to each other. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that was 8 years.
Oh, Mark,
Anyway,
we're getting old. We're getting old. We've been doing this for
I
too
know,
long.
I know, I know.
I mean, the one
Anyway,
thing I could see you doing with that, like, let's say they do like he's losing his genetic memory. I mean, in some ways, it would finally allow Ben Reilly to become a person of his own, not living in
right.
Peter's shadow all the time. So that's kind of interesting. Although what person that would be, I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point though. I mean, but again, it goes back to then why was Peter having similar visuals? So, stay tuned, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Mark,
Maybe.
why don't you tell everybody about our Slack?
Absolutely. So, hundreds of listeners like you hang out in our community of Spider-Man fans on Slack. The amazing Spider Slack community is absolutely free to join, and you can jump into active conversations with awesome people about collecting, conventions, movies, new comics, old comics, and more.
And oh man, Mark, it's been a week for the Slack between the trailer for Spider-Verse 2 and all the buzz over No Way Home. It's just a buzz in the Slack, and we're all having a lot of fun in there, finding Easter eggs in the trailers and things. So it's a lot of fun. If you want to join our awesome Spider-Man community, just follow the link in the description and come say hi. We'd love to see you in there. So yeah, that's the Slack, the amazing Spider Slack. Anyway, Mark, let's get back to talking about our issue here. This is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 80. We're going to talk about Janine and Marcus, who I think have a kind of a bit of a changing roles here in this comic. Why don't you tell us a little bit about them in this issue?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is good too because one of the things that I feel like this book has been truly missing since it started was kind of a well-rounded supporting cast, a la what Peter has always had for all these years. I mean, the Peter scenes obviously have Aunt May and MJ and Felicia and all them kind of coming in and out of it, and you those characters are new and familiar. With Ben, I mean, we're dealing with some new, we're dealing with some like old Clone Saga throwbacks, but like I feel like his supporting cast hasn't been terribly fleshed out. And this issue either fleshed them out a little bit more, or at least made things a little more fun. So in terms of Janine, I got to be honest, like she's just kind of felt like prior to this issue, like a Rapunzel in the Tower for me. You know what I mean? Like she's kind of like locked up, and she has a couple of scenes, and she seems wise to the fact that Beyond is not all it's cracked up to be, but like there really hasn't been much personality there, from my standpoint at least. And this time, I mean, it might have been a little over the top, but like when she's trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with Ben, with Beyond, like, she's like threatening, like, I'm going to drop kick you and stuff like that. And I mean, like, it's just like, she showed like a fire that I was like, okay, like this character has a pulse, like I hate to be, so dismissive, but like, to me, it made me interested to see this character on the page for the first time since this run started. Whereas I feel like prior to this, it was more of a throwback to the fans who remembered her from the Clone Saga days. So I don't know. What did you think? Did you think it was a little ridiculous how kind of amped up she was here, or do you feel that this was kind of good characterization?
No, I like this a lot, and I like how it pushes Marcus too into like uncomfortable positions. And it seems very clear to me that Maxine Danger seems to be the big bad of the whole Beyond thing. And having Marcus as a Beyond company man who is kind of conflicted about things and hiding things from Maxine to support Ben is really going to test his allegiance to whatever it is that we're experiencing. I'm still not quite sure what it is that like his allegiance is tied to with Beyond, but like he seems conflicted, and that seems like it's going to go somewhere. And if Ben isn't going to feel all that conflicted just yet, having Marcus be conflicted, I think is a good start. And I'm interested to see how like all these things are like begin pulling at each other a little bit more, and that's how you create some good drama. So I felt like this moved that forward meaningfully.
Yeah, totally. I mean, frankly, like I kind of feel like with the way Beyond has been characterized so far, like you needed this turn from Marcus because it was almost becoming like kind of, comically mustache twisting evil in terms of what these, no, I shouldn't say evil, but just like you said, clearly Maxine Danger is no good. So, in terms of the people working for her, to kind of see the shades of gray starting to come out with Marcus, it kind of like, it's a bit of a breath of fresh air, because otherwise it's just like, if they're all just going to be empty stooges for Maxine, it's like, why are we seeing Ben interact with these characters? Why do we care that they're upset with him or upset for the cause or whatever, if they're just, basically like corporate stooges? But like, clearly there's something going on here. So now you actually kind of follow, okay, why, like, try to sympathize a bit with Marcus in terms of what he's going through and how he's trying to cover. It's like, okay, what's his end game? What is he trying to get out of it? It adds a little bit of intrigue to the character. So like I said, this was a needed turn of the screw. Otherwise, it was just getting a little too one note for me in terms of all these Beyond characters.
Yeah. So, we are picking up on a thread here, like after, I guess it's like our post credits, which is something they seem to be doing more often now, is the post credits,
right,
so to speak, tease. And
thank you, Kevin Feige.
Yeah. And I don't really know, like, timeline, how this all works out, because like Aunt May left the hospital what seems like days ago to go get help. And, MJ's just been kind of like, oh, I guess Aunt May left, like enough for Felicia to settle in and even have her own adventures over in like the other titles of this book. I don't know if you read the Death of Doctor Strange tie-in this week, which I thought was good. But so Aunt May, we finally find out where she went, and big twist, she went to Dr. Octopus to I guess get data on what's going on with Peter. I thought it was weird that she stressed, "I need your mind," which makes me think like deeply uncomfortable things. Whenever we talk about mind and Dr. Octopus.
Right.
But I thought this was a fun scene. I loved his like grab my work suit. I think only because people love the white lab coat, suit, Otto Octavius from like the Eric Larson era. Like I'll be really excited to see that back. Although I have some reservations about like the logic of this scene occurring. It's like I feel like both these characters have so much history, specifically Aunt May and all of her, like, Otto interrupting or taking over the city during her wedding to Jonah Jameson Sr. Like, there's just so much history there. I just don't know that I feel like she would go to this guy. But I don't know. I mean, why not?
I mean, like, hey, look, it's comics. These characters have selective memory sometimes. It's kind of like pro wrestling in that in that mindset of like, hey, we were enemies yesterday, but today we need to be allies. I was forgiving of that. I didn't get too deep into it. Like, it was like, to me, like, this is a fun way to bring Otto back into this narrative.
Yeah.
I really feel that he was very poorly used in Sinister War. For the fact that like you said, I mean, like, we're getting this character back for the first time since what he was in Superior. So frankly, like, I want to see some intrigue here. I guess I kind of lost track of in terms of Otto's characterization in the Christos Gage series, like what he, now that he's back in his body, what he actually retains. So I guess he doesn't remember anything having to do with Peter now, right? Because he doesn't remember being Superior. Is that kind of what it is for the most part? I just kind of lost track.
The Nick
personally.
Spencer run seemed to suggest that he had a big gap in his memory and that he just couldn't remember any of that stuff. And so he basically, like, I don't know if the time frame here is sliding timeline. He doesn't remember the past 8 years mark of Spider-Man comics. Not to remind you how old we are and how long we've been doing this,
right.
But he doesn't remember the past 8 years of Spider-Man comics, so to speak. And there's certainly something interesting there. I mean, Nick Spencer was teasing at returning that, right? Like, Kindred had offered that up. Maybe when he goes to check in on Peter and his mind, he will discover Peter's memory of all of that and thus his own. Who knows? I mean, like,
Right.
I feel like, you could comic book your way into anything with Otto Octavius. So I'll be interested to see where it goes, if only to get like good Otto stories again, which, even though we got so much of it, and I think we said a number of years ago, like, I would be content not getting any more Otto stories ever again. I lied. I could get more Otto stories.
Yeah. I was just say, I mean, like, like I feel like I'm at that point with Norman Osborn for sure.
Yeah, I feel very strongly
I don't
about
need
that.
any more Norman stories. But yeah, I guess for me it was like, when they brought Otto back into his old self, yeah, I wanted to kind of see a good Spider-Man story with him again. And like I said, I don't feel that itch was scratched in Sinister War. So and yeah, like you said, this, but like it also feels like this is more akin of Otto during the Clone Saga. Hopefully not all the way through where Kane breaks his neck. Rest in peace, Otto. But like, in terms of like, even like, I know you credited the white lab suit to Larson, but like I always think of like Bagley with that too, and like the Web of Death storyline and stuff like that. Like I like that era of Otto is where I'm going with all this. Like I have a huge soft spot for kind of like that. He still hates Spider-Man, but like also kind of feels this like kinship to him. Like we're always doing this dance kind of thing. So like if that's where we inevitably lead because we're kind of stuck in the 90s here with our narrative, I'm all for it. Like, sign me up. So I'm a big fan.
All right. Well, we'll see where that goes. I know we've got some solicited covers with Otto on them, some really cool covers. So yeah, I'm just as excited to get into that story as you are. So let's assess this story, Mark. Let's give it a grade. Why don't you get us started? What are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, I'm giving this a B. I think this was a pretty solid effort all around, and I enjoyed it. I mean, yeah, the Craven fight could have been more, but like the art was really cool, and then I think some of these other little plot twists that we got this time around, this was fun, and I feel like we got enough to keep coming back for more here. What about you, Dan?
I'm giving this one a B minus. I think the kind of like overall wishy-washiness I feel about the Beyond Corporation and the kind of themes that they're playing with in this story, like I kind of want to see it move forward so that I can understand what they're doing with this, and that's starting to settle in for me. But I'm with you. I thought this was really fun, and I could do a lot more of these kind of micro stories, where we just kind of get a small story and move on. I don't have to love it, but I can enjoy it enough to give it a B minus, and that's good for me.
Good. Awesome. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Patreon, Dan?
Yeah, of course. If you find this show entertaining and valuable, please consider supporting us. That's as easy as just recommending our show to a friend. We're a small show, and everybody new that we can bring into our fold is another person we can talk Spider-Man comics with. But if you are able and you want to support us and get a bunch of content, check us out on the Patreon.
Yeah, we can only bring you this content with the support of our Patreon members, and we owe the show's success to every single one of them. We are constantly also making exclusive content for our Patreon members, right, Dan? Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, absolutely. For just $3.99, the price of a new comic, unless, of course, you're that Death of Doctor Strange tie-in, which is $4.99. Just that $3.99, you can put it towards a month subscription to our show, and you can start supporting us on Patreon. That way you'll hear our Patreon exclusive review podcasts on every new issue of Amazing Spider-Man the same week it comes out, instead of waiting for it to arrive in our public podcast feed. Mark, there's going to be a point in time where I just say $3.99, and it will be categorically less than the cost of a new comic. And, I won't know what to do with myself then.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to raise our Patreon fee.
I felt the collective cringe from all of our Patreon supporters at this moment.
Well, hey, inflation, baby. Yeah, and speaking of inflation, if you contribute $10 a month, you gain access to exclusive artwork from famous Spider-Man artists, commissioned exclusively for our members. This season, we'll be mailing out a print by artist Ron Frenz. He's created a lost page of The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, which was inked by Brett Breeding, and it depicts Tim and Spidey sharing laughs over Tim's Spider-Man collection. Plus, every episode, we release a new episode-specific desktop background created for us by the great Nick Cagnetti for our patrons to enjoy.
And I'll say, I just literally scanned that new Ron Frenz piece last night. So everybody look for it in the new year. It's going to be really beautiful, showing up on your doorstep there. I think everybody's going to love this one. But, as always, we know this is a hard time for everybody, especially around the holiday season where money is tight. So we appreciate anyone who supports the show just by listening and sharing. But if in the new year you want to make a resolution to support people whose stuff you listen to and enjoy, why not make our show one of those things? You can join our Patreon and support the continued existence of our show, and that's as easy as following the link in the description. And as always, we want to thank everybody who already supports our show and makes it possible for us to do the content that we do week in and week out.
Awesome, Dan. Well, alas, it is that time, and it's time for all good things to come to an end. So we must sadly say, we must say thank you to you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning into this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk. There's nothing sad about thanking you.
But it is sad to say goodbye. So
it's sad to say goodbye, but we love our listeners and viewers.
That is very true. Well, this episode, as always, was edited by Rick Coast with production support from my friend Andy Myers. Our artwork comes handcrafted by artists Ron Frenz, Sal Buscema, and Ray Sumser. And our theme songs were produced by Rylan Bojack, Tony Thaxton, and Spider Madge. So, Mark, until you trap me on an oil rig to convince me to leave our corporate Patreon masters behind, what's our motto?
Of course, that motto is, with great podcasts, there must also come the amazing Spider Talk.
Two men who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. Be in 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon, they'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing Spider Talk, the amazing